So cannabis oil enables patients to avoid getting high and to control that aspect. And it's relatively cheap compared to smoking. A small bottle contains about 230 drops, and you need about 20 grams of cannabis to make it. You don't even need the buds, you can also use the clippings. And as you know, when you grow cannabis, you use the buds for smoking, but about 50% of the weight of the plant is thrown away as waste. Well, that waste is good enough to make oil out of it. The quality is the same. The amount of oil on it is not so much as on the buds, but the quality is the same. So it's relatively cheap. I'll show you how you can make it all yourself. This is the method I developed, and I deliberately took components that look very innocent, because as you all know, the problem with cannabis are the people who don't use it, and to them it should look innocent. Well, that's why I use the baby bottle method. What you do is you take a baby bottle and a nylon sock, and you put some ground up cannabis in it. That can be bud, but it can also be leaves, or it can be clippings, whatever you want. Then you tie the sock and you soak it in alcohol, pure alcohol, 95% pure. The resin dissolves in the alcohol, and the alcohol turns green. Then you pour the alcohol into a baby bottle and put it in a baby bottle heater. And you turn the baby bottle heater on. And within a day, all the alcohol is evaporated. And if you want to speed up the process, you hang an air pump into it, and then the baby bottle is evaporated in an hour and a half. And if you repeat this process, so you keep continuously throwing in fresh alcohol, at the end of the day you let it all evaporate. At the end of the day you end up with a little layer of pure oil. And this pure oil, you can weigh it, and then add 4 times that weight of olive oil, mix it very well, and it becomes fluid. Because this pure oil, when it's like that, and it's warm, it's still fluid, but when it gets cold, it becomes very stiff, like black peanut butter. And when you mix it with olive oil, you can put it in a drip emitter and use it per drop exactly. You can control the high, you can control the amount you take, you can control the effect. It becomes a medicine. So I got all these people who were very, very sick, who were not being helped with regular medication, and they all came for my help for the past 4 years. And they all came with all sorts of different diseases, and I started to sell them oil in order to see if it worked. And in the past few years, these are the diseases that I treated people with, and again, in 50% of the cases, these people were helped within 10-15 minutes. 25% of my patients, they needed to adjust the amount of oil, the dosage, the time of intake, etc. And with 25% of my patients, it didn't work at all. But there's a long list of all sorts of diseases. In the beginning, I knew nothing about diseases, and each time I was surprised with all these strange names and all these strange diseases. But I can tell you about 50% of a modern population is actually chronically ill. And it's just a matter of time before that disease becomes eminent. The new thing today is CBD. THC is the main component, the main cannabinoid, and the next component that is mostly present in cannabis is CBD. And as you know, CBD is considered sort of the holy grail. Cannabis has a certain amount of energy to produce these 120 cannabinoids, and when you concentrate on THC, there's less energy left over for the other cannabinoids, including CBD. So modern commercial cannabis has a lot of THC in it, but only very small amounts of CBD, something like 0.1 to 0.3%. And that small percentage still makes it medicinally active. And now we got this big news. There are all sorts of growers all over the world that try to grow new strains that have more CBD into them. But here in Holland we experienced a new source of CBD, and that's grown out of industrial hemp. There are people that were growing industrial hemp for 4 years, increasing the amount of CBD, and now we can just buy pure CBD oil. And this pure CBD oil is diluted with olive oil in such an amount that the percentage of THC, which is still present in there, is lower than 0.2%, which means it's not illegal in Europe or in Holland. The other thing is that scientists found out that cannabis does work, cannabinoids do work against cancer, especially when there's 25% CBD compared to the THC level. And what I do these days with Mediweed is we take THC oil, we figure out how much THC is in there, and we make sure we add CBD so that 25% CBD is present compared to the THC level. Which means that I expect that in the next couple of months, half year or whatever, we'll see an increasing number of people who get cured from all sorts of diseases, especially cancer. This CBD oil, we call it Golioli, because I have the idea that Americans will have a problem with pronouncing the G.
Really?
So then it will sound something like holy oli, and that's really what it is, because you can use this oil completely without getting high, and in 25% of the cases it immediately helps you medicinally. I have some Golioli bottles with me, and everybody who wants one at the end of this presentation can come up and get one. I have a whole box here, so there's a lot of it, and then you can try it. It doesn't make you high. There are people who tried 5 or 10 drops, it doesn't make you high, but it does cure a lot of problems. It's also very good. It restores your nerve system after drinking too much or celebrating the High Times Cup, smoking too much. You just take a couple of drops of this oil, and the next day you'll feel fresh and refreshed. So try it out, please be my guest. Now, I dare to predict that in future we'll get a completely different view on medication, and I call this cannabinoid-orientated medication. And in my mind it's really strange that we haven't tried this, because there are 120 different cannabinoids and they all have a function. We just don't know what. We know a little bit about THC and we know a little bit about CBD, but the other 120 we have no idea. And I dare to predict that in future we'll be able to analyze a blood sample, for instance, and the computer will tell you which one of these 120 cannabinoids you should use. A drop of this, drop of that, and then you can create your own medicine. I just got a signal, 5 minutes, is that right? Jeez, okay. I'll just give you a quick view of a couple of patients. This guy, he had spasms, Parkinson. Spasms were so severe that he couldn't sleep for 2 or 3 days on a row, and he wanted to commit suicide. I gave him 3 drops, and within 10-15 minutes the spasms were gone. This kid was suffering from severe autism, which meant that he only wanted to communicate with his mother because his mother was feeding him. He didn't want to talk to his father. He didn't want to use the toilet. He used the garden. And again, half a drop a day, and this little kid is completely changed. You can communicate with him, shake hands with him, he'll explain to you why he likes to play in the garden, etc., etc. And half a year before that, it was impossible to he was impossible to speak to. Marcel van der Hof is a guy who has kidney cancer. He gets chemo, and that chemo gave him incredible nerve pain in his hands and in his feet. And the doctor told him that he should attach ice cubes to his hands and feet and try to sleep with it. So of course for 2 years this guy couldn't sleep. And again, he takes a couple of drops of oil, and now he has a reasonable life. He will die because of the kidney cancer, but at least he has no pain from his medication. This lady, she has, as it's called, hereditary sleeping disorder, as her mother had. Her mother never had a good night's sleep. She never had a good night's sleep in her life. And she takes 5 drops a night and has a wonderful sleep every night now. Epileptic seizures are a well-known problem that can be cured with cannabis, or let's say avoided. This lady, Nelke, takes a couple of drops a day and has no epileptic seizures. It even works with dogs. This dog was about to die until his lady got in touch with me and gave the dog some of the oil. And as you can see, he's very happy, alive and kicking. ADHD, that's how it's called in Dutch. I think in English it's called attention deficit disorder. These kids, they get Ritalin, and Ritalin is a very dangerous regular medicine. It creates breasts on boys. It limits the growth of kids, and it probably causes cancer in the long term. A lot of my patients, they have attention deficit disorder, and their parents don't want to give them Ritalin before he goes to sleep. He has a wonderful sleep, and the next day he's fine. Scoliosis, it's a disease in which your spine grows into an S or any other shape, and you can imagine that that's very painful. This lady was given morphine up to a level that she was completely out of it. She couldn't use her bike anymore because she was driving right straight into the bushes. She couldn't go to get money from the bank because she put it in her PIN code and then forgot to take out the money. Things like that. I taught her to grow a couple of plants on the balcony. She makes her own oil now and has no more pain, 3 to 5 drops. Franco, he's one of the strain hunters from Greenhouse. He had a painful wart on his foot. For 7 years, all doctors tried all sorts of things, and then you know what they do. They freeze it with CO2, and then they cut off the wart, or they laser it, and all that it did was give him terrible wounds, and he didn't get cured, and he had a lot of trouble for 7 years, until I gave him some pure oil, and he applied it 3 times a day, and within 3 weeks he was cured. And you can see Franco now on the internet when he's chasing new seed strains together with his friend and boss as a strain hunter. You can see them if you type in on YouTube the Greenhouse Seed Company, and you can see Arjen and Franco walking around happily. Fibromyalgia is a typical women's disease. These women get all sorts of medication. This lady, she took 26 pills a day, and she had incredible pains, and the pills didn't work, gave her all sorts of side effects, and I gave her oil, and within 3 or 4 weeks she was cured, because I think that fibromyalgia is caused by bad sleeping. This guy was sexually abused. He was an autism case, and he was also sexually abused, which created a lot of aggression in this guy because he couldn't speak. So he was attacking everybody around him, and healthcare people said, well, he's rather small now, but when he gets 18, he'll kill somebody. So you'll have to give him to us, and we'll put him in an institution. And what they do in institutions is medicate them to keep them quiet, and patients like that usually don't get much older than 35 years. And because they are very frustrated, they rip their clothes apart, they start to throw away with their excrements, and then they're tied to a wall. That was the future of this young boy, until his father decided to grow a couple of plants, make his own oil, and he gives his son 1 or 2 drops a day, and the guy is happily, very happy. He He sings songs, he's very communicative, really nice, sweet boy now. Lisa de Roos, my eldest patient, for the last 10 years she had incredible pain because of rheumatism, and she takes 4 or 5 drops and no problems. The last case, Artasio Friedreich, this happened to be one of my oldest customers from the Mellow Yellow days. I met him when he was in a wheelchair, and his disease means that his nerve system gets attacked by his own immune system, and it means that he loses the control over his muscles gradually, and it means that patients like this, they'll ultimately die because their heart will stop. Patients like this are checked by a doctor every half year, and they look at their heart condition, and they look at the heart condition to predict when this patient is going to die. Now, I gave him the oil because he also had spasms. And when he went for his checkup with the doctor said, "This is impossible. Your heart function wasn't deteriorated this time, it improved." I think cannabis in coffee shops will remain a part in modern society. It will never go away. And we need to live with it, and we need to find some sort of form in which it can be used civilized, because coffee shops are the only places where you can meet people of all ages and social levels who communicate really happily with one another, in opposite to what you see in bars where people use alcohol. The other hopeful thing I want to share with you is that in Haarlem, which is a nice city close by, it's like Amsterdam used to be 25 years ago, there is now a situation created in which coffee shops control themselves and are controlled by an authority in which the local government takes apart consumers, coffee shop owners, we of Mediweed, GGD, healthcare, what's the other one? Stichting Drugsbeleid. And these people control the coffee shops, and coffee shops that are approved by this institution, they don't get busted by police anymore. They're not controlled on how many meters away they are from the schools. And I dare to predict that this will mean the end of the coffee shop wars in Holland. So diluted cannabis oil, I think, is going to change a lot of things for patients, but also the way the non-smokers will look at cannabis smoking. Because 95% of the people that come to me for this oil are people who start with explaining that they never used drugs or cannabis before in their life. And after a couple of weeks using this oil, they're the most pro-cannabis activists that you can imagine. So I think that cannabis oil will change the attitude towards cannabis smoking in general. Thank you.
Wernard Bruining, everybody. Thank you very much. Great presentation. Thank you very much. Really miraculous. Really miraculous. So anyway, Soma's going to be coming up in about 5 minutes. We're going to get him started. Once again, Wernard has some samples here. So check them out. Thank you once again.